This is more of a legacy thing that's been sort of externally funded, but we've just sort of been feeding on. And I saw Martine's with Art online. I want to give a shout out. She's a major mover in this. She started all off 3 cycles ago now, looking at the Athabasca Oil Sands and what's going on and how we can do better in terms of environmental geology. Again, I'm going to skip through this. This really just relates to this cycle, but you go back 3 cycles, there's an awful lot of people. This sort of is a great, I love this diagram. Jason supplied it to me, and it's sort of here's your mine. You've got airborne, you've got waterborne, you've got groundwater. There's plumes at all scales in the oil, potential plumes. I should say potential plumes at all scales in the oil sands. But you also have other things like dust, wildfires, petroleum coke. These are the big part of petroleum coke that's a byproduct of their upgrading. You have vehicle emissions. And so there's a lot of different things that are going to play. And throughout the 3 cycles, this has been how can we identify and potentially quantify different sources? It's a really, really difficult. And I think if I was to summarize my summary at the end, it's we've done a pretty darn good job, I think. Here's this another of Jason's. Here's a fingerprint. So here's the petroleum coke. Here's raw oil sand, wildfire, gasoline on a deuterium carbon-13 plot. So you actually have end members, and you can actually do compound-specific isotopes on some of these organic molecules. You can start figuring out and modelling where you sit in that space. You also have radiocarbon, L14C. Modern carbon is about plus 50, and fossil carbon is minus 1,000 with C14 and that gives you also another mechanism to actually look at what came from where. So this is some work that sort of started in the late part of the previous cycle, then got completed during the pandemic, and we sample snow from that's Athabasca Oil Sands region lakes. So here we go. Here's the 2016 Fort McMurray wildfire, and here's all these lakes that we basically, Jason went and sampled all these lakes and the snow on it. So the snow is giving you pretty much a pure atmospheric signal of how the atmosphere has distributed material. And as you see for the radiocarbon, you see AR6 is essentially right in the heart of the oil sands operation. And the further you go, the more modern the organic carbon becomes. So you've actually got a pretty fossil source in it. So that gives you an indication that you're seeing quite a lot of petrogenic carbon, oil sands carbon, in the near lakes. If you go to the carbon-13 of phenanthrene, you see the same thing. This is 2 different phenanthrene molecules, and you see the same thing of distance from the center of the oil sands. It gets more towards gasoline, wildfire, and further away from petroleum coke and oil sand. If you actually then put deuterium into the mix, and you get into that space, that fingerprint space that I showed you before, you're into petroleum coke, and then model the end member distributions. What you find is that for these lakes, which is again distance from the center of the oil sand, the most lakes up till about 20, 30 kilometers away, heavily impacted by petroleum coke, a byproduct, distribution of a byproduct of the actual upgrading process. And that's consistent with other work that has shown petroleum coke is a major contributor to the environmental footprint in this area. So when you get to sort of really far away, you start seeing you're losing that signal, which is good. You're getting a pretty good fingerprint and apportionment of what came from where. So move on to current research. This is actually funded by Alberta Environment and Parks, and we're going to look at PAH from the Athabasca River. So not airborne this time, but waterborne. And here's the operations in brown, and here's the distribution of the sampling sites down the river. Okay, and so upstream to downstream, it's a big basin. It has a lot of flow at times, up to 400, close to 5,000 meters cubed per second. What was you saying, Alfonso? We're saying 200 liters per minute of water. Something completely different. A big suspended, and so they so-called suspended load. And again, there's a large amount of suspended load coming down this river at different times. So overall concentrations going from upstream to downstream sites. What you're seeing is in PAHs, you're seeing, again, in the middle of the operation, you're getting higher PAHs. There's the operations. This is upstream, that's downstream, this is the zone of operations. And you're seeing this, you can argue that there's some sites there that have higher contribution. And again, the same, if you actually look at the alkylated version, you actually see the same thing, but of phenanthrene. So a very specific component of these, you're seeing very low concentrations of it. And that makes the isotopic analysis difficult, to say the least. So taking those phenanthrenes and a variety of other compounds here and analyzing the compound-specific delta 13 value of those compounds. So this is a bit of a complex graph. Okay. Upstream, downstream, these are the symbols that you need to look for. So here's a downstream site. So for this pyrene, you're actually seeing a variety, and it tends to be mostly it looks like a gasoline signal. Some of these compounds, you're starting to see an oil sand signal in here and other compounds. So it's a really complex signal. Until you get the deuterium results, which they're sort of really trying, but again, as I said, the concentrations are really low, and it's really, really tough to get those analyses. You're sort of a bit stuck in terms of apportionment modeling, but that's work that's ongoing. That was all Jason's work. This is my work. As I said, I like to work on smaller scale. So here's 30 meters, and really coming down site scale. So here's a tailings pond here, and here's a seep. And this is stuff I've shown before. Here's a whole bunch of sampling sites, and these are boron concentration contours that show a nice plume coming out of that seep. There's no doubt this is a tailings pond. What's called OSPW, oil sands production water leakage out of that tailings pond. What's interesting is that attenuation is very rapid. If you actually go and look at, this is called an acid extractable organic signature. So this is even organics over odd organic ratio, and it's often taken as an indicator of OSPW. So this so here you have the boron contours that I showed you before. You have sort of a similar pattern, but a much more rapid attenuation. But if you go from 2.3 to 1.3 in about 20 meters, and you're almost at background. There's your background at 0.95. There's your tailings pond at 3.5. And so essentially you've got this very rapid attenuation. We also did eDNA. This is robust PCA stats. And so here's the Plume dynamics in the way I formulated the stats and the non-Plume. If you actually then plot the eDNA bacterial component, what you see is a real nice scattergram. But actually, if you look at the green, these are Firmicutes bacteria, and they tend to plot with the Plume, whereas non-Plume bacteroidia, I always get that wrong, tend to plot outside of that. And then you have other groups that just don't seem to be impacted. So we take it back to this. What you see, interestingly, is that this Firmicute tends to mirror a very rapid attenuation away from just like in OSPW measure. And it has a nice correlation. Whereas this Firmicute tends to mirror much more the boron concentration, much more gradual dissolution. So there's some real interesting stuff in here that I think points the way to what is actually the bacterial response or interresponse between the OSPW plume and the actual components of the bacterial community. Again, I think we've come a long way over the last 10 years. Apportionment of sources and understanding of processes is going to be an ongoing process. It's going to be an ongoing investigation for multiple players. I really want to. The isotopic approach really does work very well. It's got a major headway in understanding how to actually generate a realistic portrayal of the true environmental footprint of the oil sands. We're not 100% of the oil sands industrial components. We're not all the way there, but it's very powerful. That's just a few.